My name's Lars, and I work admissions at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. 3 years ago, we started getting floods of applications from Americans. Now I spend half my day explaining that no, we don't have fraternities, and no, your roommate won't necessarily speak English as their first language. Last September, this kid from Texas showed up to orientation week wearing a shirt that said "Study Abroad Legend" in huge letters. I had to tell him he wasn't studying abroad anymore. He'd actually enrolled here. He looked genuinely confused, like the concept hadn't occurred to him. He kept asking when he'd go back to his real university to finish his degree. We had another American during the first week who got upset because we didn't have a campus bookstore that sold university-branded hoodies and coffee mugs. She walked into my office holding a printout from our website and demanded to know where the school spirit section was located. When I explained we don't really do that here, she accused us of false advertising because American universities always have those stores. She said she'd checked Yale's website, and they had one, so clearly it was an international standard. I showed her that we're not Yale, and she said that was exactly the problem. Then she asked if she could start one herself as a business venture, and whether she'd need a permit from the student union. The Danish kid sitting next to her during this conversation looked like he'd witnessed a minor traffic accident. Later, he asked me if all Americans thought universities were supposed to function like shopping malls. I didn't have a good answer. I'm Tamush, and I coordinate student housing in Krakow, Poland. Last month, an American student called me in a panic because his roommate, a guy from Germany, hadn't introduced himself with a firm handshake and direct eye contact within the first 30 seconds of meeting. The American said this was a massive red flag in his culture, indicating either extreme rudeness or that the roommate was hiding something serious. He wanted an immediate room transfer. I tried explaining that different people have different greeting styles, but he cut me off. He told me he'd taken a business communications class at his Texas high school that specifically taught handshake protocols as universal professional standards. He'd learned that weak or absent handshakes directly correlated with untrustworthiness, and he had the PowerPoint slides to prove it. He emailed them to me. They were from 2008, when I suggested maybe European social norms work differently. He said that was impossible because his teacher had told him these were global workplace requirements, not cultural preferences. The German roommate, when I asked him about it, said he'd just been tired and had waved hello. He hadn't realized this was an international incident. They still don't really talk. My brother runs a student services office in Copenhagen, it's Denmark, and he's got a story about an American who tried to report a professor for discrimination. Her crime? Not learning all 60 students' names by the second lecture. The American student insisted this was standard practice in any quality educational institution and showed my brother a copy of his liberal arts college handbook from Vermont that required professors to learn names within the first week. He said his previous professors had managed it. So clearly the Danish professor was either incompetent or deliberately singling him out by not prioritizing him. My brother explained that in large European lecture courses, professors often don't learn individual names at all. Students are expected to approach professors if they need personal attention. The American said that was a human rights violation and asked if Denmark had an educational ombudsman he could contact. My brother told him, sure, go ahead. As far as I know, he actually filed a formal complaint. It went nowhere. The professor still doesn't know his name. I work IT support at Trinity College, Dublin, Ireland, and an American student submitted a ticket claiming our online portal discriminated against her because it didn't have her preferred payment plan option. She wanted to pay her semester fees in monthly installments with a small interest charge, exactly like her phone bill back home. When I told her we require payment up front each semester, she said that was financially exclusionary and possibly illegal under consumer protection laws. She'd researched it. Apparently, her father's credit card company in Ohio offered payment plans for everything. She'd assumed this was an international banking standard that all institutions had to honor. She cited something called the Fair Credit Billing Act, which I looked up later and has nothing to do with university payments in Ireland. When I explained our payment structure was standard across Irish universities, she asked why Ireland was so behind the times in financial innovation. Then she asked if I could escalate her request to someone who understood modern payment systems. I was the escalation point. She submitted 3 more tickets over the next week, each one longer than the last. My cousin manages a university gymnasium in Heidelberg, Germany. And last semester, an American showed up demanding to know why we didn't offer personal trainers as part of the standard gym membership. He said his state university in Michigan had included them for free, so he'd naturally assumed this was standard international practice for student recreation facilities. When my cousin explained, "We're a basic gym with equipment, and that's it," the American asked how students were supposed to avoid injury without professional guidance. My cousin suggested watching YouTube videos or asking friends. The American said that was a liability nightmare and insisted German universities must have different insurance requirements that would mandate professional supervision. He'd clearly spent time constructing this theory. He then offered to volunteer as an unofficial personal trainer himself, since he'd watched a lot of fitness content online and had done CrossFit for 2 years back home. My cousin declined. The American looked genuinely hurt, like he'd been trying to solve a systemic problem and got rejected for being helpful. I'm Javier, and I manage a university cafeteria in Salamanca, Spain. An American student complained to me last week because we don't keep the cafeteria open past 9 p.m. She said she had late-night study sessions and needed access to hot food at 11 p.m. or midnight, just like her dorm cafeteria in Pennsylvania that stayed open until 2 a.m. When I explained that our cafeteria has operated on the same schedule for 30 years and students can buy food elsewhere or prepare their own, she told me I was forcing unhealthy eating habits on students by making them rely on vending machines. She'd actually calculated the nutritional difference and brought me a printed chart. Then she said American universities had figured out that student success correlated directly with cafeteria hours, and she was shocked Spain hadn't caught on yet. She asked if Spanish universities had lower graduation rates because of this. I told her our graduation rates were fine. She said fine wasn't good enough, and that we should be striving for excellence. She mentioned something about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I told her there's a 24-hour supermarket 3 blocks away. My friend works at a campus cafe in Amsterdam, Netherlands, and she had an American order a large coffee, then get visibly upset when free refills weren't offered. He told her that in America, coffee refills were standard at any cafe or diner, and he'd assumed this was an international hospitality norm since coffee culture was global. When she explained we charged per cup, he said that seemed like a scam designed to exploit college students who couldn't function without caffeine. He asked to speak to her manager about implementing a refill policy. Her manager, also Dutch, came out and confirmed we charged per cup. The Americans said this was why European customer service had a bad reputation, and asked if they'd considered how much more revenue they'd generate through increased foot traffic if they offered refills. He'd done freelance marketing consulting for a student org back home. My friend's manager thanked him for his input and charged him for a second coffee. The American paid but made a point of leaving no tip and saying that out loud. I'm Julia, and the first worked the register at a university pizzeria near Bologna, Italy. Last month, an American student ordered a pizza, then asked where the ranch dressing was. I told her we don't have ranch dressing. She stared at me like I'd told her we don't have plates. She said every pizza place she'd ever been to in America offered ranch as a standard condiment, and she'd assumed this was a global pizza industry practice since pizza was Italian, and Italians would obviously set the standards. I tried to explain that ranch dressing isn't traditional here, and most Italians wouldn't put it on pizza. She said traditions evolve and asked why we weren't keeping up with international tastes. Then she pulled up her phone and showed me an article about how ranch was America's most popular condiment, as if this proved her point. She suggested we could increase sales by offering it, especially to international students who expected it. I told her we're doing fine without it. She said I was being closed-minded and asked if Italian businesses were always this resistant to innovation. She ordered a Coke instead and drank it with her pizza while making disappointed faces the whole time. My brother runs a student pub in Edinburgh, Scotland, and an American came in asking why we didn't have happy hour specials every single day. He said his college bar in Arizona had daily happy hours from 4 to 7 p.m., and he'd assumed this was an international standard for establishments near universities, because students everywhere needed affordable drinking options. When my brother explained we have specials occasionally but not daily, the American said that was economically inefficient. He'd taken an intro business course and understood pricing strategies. He claimed that predictable daily discounts created customer loyalty and cited something about consumer behavior theory. My brother told him we've been in business for 40 years with our current model. The American said 40 years might be exactly why we needed to modernize and asked if he could present a business proposal during a slower shift. He was serious. My brother told him we were good. The American said he'd come back when my brother was ready to discuss it properly and left his email address on a napkin anyway. I'm Marek, and I work the ticket counter at Wrocław's main train station in Poland. A few weeks ago, an American student asked me why we don't have a campus shuttle system that connects the train station directly to the university dorms. I told her there's a regular city bus that stops near campus. She said that wasn't the same thing and explained that her university in North Carolina had a dedicated shuttle system funded by student fees. So she'd naturally assumed all universities operated the same way. When I explained that European universities generally don't run their own transport systems because city buses exist, she said that seemed inefficient. She asked who coordinated routes to ensure students got to class on time. I told her students figure it out themselves, using the public bus schedule. She said that placed an unfair burden on students who weren't from here and didn't know the system yet. Then she asked if there was a student government she could petition to start a shuttle program. I told her the city manages all public transport. She said maybe the city and university could partner, like they apparently do in America. I sold her a bus pass. My cousin's a taxi driver in Lisbon, Portugal, and he picked up an American student who got annoyed when he didn't know where the main campus was without an address. The student said the university was the biggest institution in the area, so obviously any local driver should know where it is automatically. My cousin explained that the university has multiple buildings spread across different neighborhoods, not one central campus. The American said that was a bizarre way to organize a university and insisted there must be a main administrative building everyone refers to as campus. My cousin asked for an actual address. The American said he shouldn't need one because in his Florida college town, you could just tell any Uber driver to take you to campus and they'd know exactly where you meant. He said this proved universities should be centrally located for practical reasons. My cousin told him, this isn't Florida. The American said he was aware of that, thanks, but that basic geographic logic should still apply. He eventually found the address on his phone. My cousin dropped him off. The kid didn't tip, and my cousin didn't expect him to, because tipping taxi drivers isn't standard here. But the American made a comment about it anyway. I'm Annika, and I work at a tourism office in Stockholm, Sweden. That also helps students with city orientation. An American came in asking for a map that showed all the must-see college town attractions within walking distance of his dorm. I gave him a city map. He said that wasn't what he meant. He wanted a map specifically designed for students that highlighted cheap restaurants, bars, late-night study spots, and entertainment venues, like the one his university in Wisconsin had made for incoming freshmen. When I told him we don't make those, he asked why not. I explained that Stockholm is a city, not a college town, and students are just residents who happen to study here. He said that seemed like a missed opportunity for student engagement and asked if the city's tourism board had ever considered marketing, specifically to university students. I told him students figure out the city on their own. He said that was pretty sink or swim and seemed exclusionary to international students who didn't speak Swedish. I pointed out he was speaking to me in English right now. He said that wasn't the point. I worked the help desk at Charles University in Prague, Czech Republic. And last semester, an American student asked me why we don't have an official university app that tracks everything from class schedules to dining hall menus. She said her college in Massachusetts had an app that did all of that, plus real-time campus bus tracking. And she'd assumed this was standard for any modern university. When I told her we use a web portal for schedules and students check dining menus on posted boards, she asked how we expected students to stay organized without centralized mobile access. I suggested using a calendar. She said that was inefficient and asked if Czech universities had considered how technology could improve student outcomes. Then she mentioned something about digital literacy being essential in the 21st century. I told her our web portal works fine on phones. She said it wasn't optimized for mobile and asked if there was a student tech committee she could join to advocate for better systems. I gave her an email address for student services. She's apparently still emailing them. I'm Henrik, and I run a student advisory office in Bergen, Norway. Last week, an American finishing his first semester asked me if his degree would be respected back in the US since we don't have standardized testing or class rankings here. I told him our degrees are internationally recognized, and plenty of our graduates work in America. He said that wasn't his concern. He wanted to know if American employers would understand that. European education is just as rigorous without the metrics they're used to seeing. I told him he'd have a degree from a respected institution, and that's what matters. He said he hoped I was right, but seemed unconvinced. Then he asked if we could add a GPA system just for American students, so they'd have something familiar to show employers. I told him no. The thing is, most of these students adjust eventually. They figure out that universities exist in a lot of different forms and that their way isn't the only way. But those first few months are always rough. And I'm never sure if they're struggling because things are genuinely different here or because they genuinely believe the entire world operated exactly like their campus back home. Maybe both. If you're thinking about studying in Europe, just remember, you're not abroad. You're here. Act like it.